The movie opens with a paperboy delivering newspapers through a suburban neighborhood. The camera focuses on one particular house where a newspaper lands in the driveway. We can see a partial headline that reads, "Boy Who Killed, Released From." A teenage girl named Paula runs out to grab the newspaper. Her father, District Attorney Bill Carson, is preparing for a hunting trip. He's dressed in full hunting gear and warns Paula about her responsibilities while he's away. She must do her homework, and most importantly, she must not cut class. After her father leaves, Paula throws the newspaper in the trash. The full headline is revealed. "Boy Who Killed, Father Released from Institution." Then Bill Carson drives to the marshlands for his hunting trip. As he wades through the swamp, shooting at ducks, someone hiding nearby watches him with a bow and arrows. Then, an arrow suddenly flies through the air and strikes Bill in the chest. He falls to the ground, wounded but alive. The mysterious attacker leaves without checking if the job is finished. Bill begins crawling through the marsh, desperately trying to make his way home. Meanwhile, we see a guy driving recklessly through town. He nearly hits a child on a big wheel and makes inappropriate jokes about it. He is Dwight Ingalls. At Furley High School, he arrives late to chemistry class. When the teacher questions him, other students whisper the answers to help him. The teacher demonstrates what happens when pure sodium is dropped into water, creating a small explosion. After that, in a gym class, Paula walks past a rack of bows and arrows. She notices a leaf stuck in one of the arrows and pulls it off. On the other side of the gymnasium, the boys are climbing ropes. A student named Brian stares at Paula, which bothers Dwight. The gym coach forces Brian to climb higher, but Dwight shakes the rope, causing Brian to fall. Later, at a local hangout spot, Paula and her friend Colleen wait for Dwight. Brian arrives on his bicycle, and Colleen teases Paula about Brian liking her. When Dwight pulls up, he suggests they go to Paula's house to be alone while her father is away. He goes to get food, and Brian takes the opportunity to bring Paula a hot dog. When Dwight returns, he orders the girls into his car and confronts Brian privately. Dwight tells Brian they used to be friends, but that's over now. Brian mentions he was in the hospital and he's better now. Dwight responds coldly, saying that when someone breaks a leg, doctors can x-ray it to see if it's healed. But Brian went to a mental hospital with a broken mind, and they can only guess if he's better. Dwight warns Brian to stay away from him and Paula. At Paula's house, Dwight tries on her father's clothes and makes comments about being the district attorney. They begin making out, but Paula stops him, saying not until his grades improve. The next day at school, Principal Dante makes morning announcements. Throughout the day, various teachers show inappropriate behavior towards students, creating an uncomfortable atmosphere in the school. So that evening, Dwight and Paula return to the school with Colleen and another student to break into the office. Paula gives them her key to the school office because she works there as a student assistant. They want to read Brian's psychiatric records. Breaking into the administrative office, they find Brian's file and read that he was diagnosed as violent and schizophrenic, treated with electroconvulsive therapy. The records reveal that Brian's father died when his car's brake lines were cut. Brian had refused to tell investigators who taught him how to cut brake lines, saying, "You don't betray a friend." The group makes photocopies of the documents before leaving. The next day in math class, students begin mocking Brian by pretending to be electrocuted, referencing his shock therapy treatments. Brian gives a correct answer that Dwight cannot, further increasing tensions between them. In the next scene, we see a field trip to the marsh. Then, the science teacher steps on something in the water. It's Bill Carson, still alive after days in the swamp. However, the teacher dismisses the sound as a bullfrog, and the class moves on, leaving Bill still struggling to survive. That night, there's a basketball game at school. During the game, Dwight gets into a fight, and his father confronts him, causing Dwight to storm out. Meanwhile, their friend Gary is attacked. His throat is slashed, and he dies while Colleen screams. Her screams are drowned out by the cheers from the crowd, celebrating a winning basket. The next day in auto shop class, the teacher announces they'll be working on brakes. Dwight and Brian work on Dwight's car together. Brian reminds Dwight of when they used to work on Brian's father's car, specifically mentioning when they took a part out and didn't put it back in. The implication becomes clear that Dwight was the one who taught Brian how to sabotage brake lines. After that, in math class, the teacher sends both Dwight and Brian to see the vice principal, Mrs. Nocht. When Brian goes into her office, she tells him that none of his teachers want him in their classes. Brian responds rudely and is suspended. Later, Mrs. Knocht is working in the copy room when someone attacks her. Her face is smashed into the copy machine glass, killing her. The machine continues running, producing photocopies of her dead face pressed against the glass. On one of the copies, a hand wearing a distinctive ring is visible. The ring belongs to Dwight. After that, Paula discovers the body and screams. Dwight runs to the scene, followed slowly by Brian. When Dwight enters the copy room, he sees Brian in the doorway and immediately starts yelling. Police arrive at the school with helicopters and bloodhounds. They search the surrounding area, including the marsh where Bill Carson is still crawling through the mud. One of the bloodhounds finds Bill, eats his donut, and runs off without alerting its handlers. At a parent meeting, Dwight's father forces him to tell everyone what he saw, though this isn't true. At Paula's house, she finds her father's tape recorder and plays it. She hears Bill rehearsing his courtroom statements about Brian's trial, calling him scum and saying he should be locked away forever. The next day at school, Paula discovers documents from Brian's trial. She realizes that Brian refused to name the person who taught him to cut brake lines because he didn't want to betray his friend. Paula understands that Dwight was that friend. She tries to confront Dwight with the evidence, but Brian appears. They realize Brian is still in the school, not in hiding elsewhere, as everyone assumed. That night, Paula is taking a bath when Brian breaks into her house. He wants her help finding the real killer. He shows her one of the photocopies from the murder scene, pointing out Dwight's ring visible in the image. This appears to prove that Dwight is the killer. The next morning, they receive a phone call from Dwight, who sounds angry and possibly drunk. He says he's meeting with Coach for a private gym class. Paula and Brian rush to the school to stop him, believing Dwight is the killer. When they arrive, they find that Coach has been murdered. He was impaled with a flagpole while jumping on a trampoline. Paula runs through the school and finds the bodies of Colleen and Gary tied together in a closet. She encounters the math teacher, who tries to help her. They run through various classrooms, trying to escape. Eventually, they end up in a classroom with 2 doors labeled 1 and 2. There's a math problem on the board, and the teacher must solve it to determine which door is safe. The teacher solves the problem and chooses door number 1. When he opens it, Brian attacks him with an axe to the face. Brian reveals the truth to Paula. He admits that he is the killer, when Paula's father prosecuted him 5 years ago at age 12. So, Brian decided to embrace that identity and become the best killer he could be. He's been systematically murdering people ever since his release. Brian tells Paula he likes her, but that won't stop him from killing her. It's just his job now. Dwight suddenly crashes through door number 2 and pulls Paula to safety. They run through the school with Brian chasing them with an axe. They try the exit doors, but find them chained shut. They escape into the science classroom, where Dwight searches for the sodium rock from earlier, knowing it explodes when mixed with water. He grabs the wrong substance, and it doesn't work. Brian mocks him for not paying attention in class. They run outside and end up trapped in the auto shop garage. Brian locks them inside and begins hunting them. He starts various machinery and throws an engine block at them. A fight breaks out. Brian gets Dwight's head caught in a mounted vise and begins tightening it. He tells Dwight that he's a killer who just needs the opportunity. If Dwight kills Paula, Brian will let him go. Dwight refuses. Brian continues taunting and tightening the vise. Paula begs Brian to let Dwight go, saying she'll do anything. Brian starts assaulting her. Paula tells him to close his eyes, and when he does, she grabs a hammer and strikes him in the head with the claw end. She then pushes him onto a table-mounted circular saw, killing him. The school janitor appears and casually offers to clean up the mess. Paula releases Dwight from the vise, and they make their way out of the building. Outside, they speak with a police detective. He explains that Dwight's ring appeared in the photocopy because when Dwight rushed into the room and grabbed Mrs. Knocht's body, his hand was captured by the machine, which was still running. Dwight is not the killer, after all. The detective tells them to go home and tell Paula's father hello when he gets back from his trip. As Dwight drives Paula home, she reflects on how she liked Brian and trusted her intuition about him. She mentions that Brian talked about killing beyond space and time, killing in the future. She says he was crazy. Suddenly, Bill Carson stumbles out onto the road in front of Dwight's car. Dwight realizes the brakes have been cut, Brian's final act. Dwight manages to stop the car by spinning it around and throwing it into different gears. Bill approaches the car, still wounded from the arrow, covered in mud and filth after surviving days in the marsh. He announces that he's going to kill Brian Woods, saying he should have gotten the electric chair instead of treatment. Paula and Dwight inform him that Brian is dead. Bill suddenly realizes what time it is. He looks at Paula and says, Paula smiles, and with that, the story comes to an end.